Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. I hope the weekend was good. We had a great Mindspeak session with Kiprono Kitoni, chairman of the Kenya Chamber, and really was marvellous. He was very inspirational, spoke about his personal story, and we're in the edit speak right now, and I'll have that up because they're pretty timeless lessons he gave us. Let me put up his life lessons, 10 life lessons at Mindspeak. They were very, very powerful in point of fact. Simple, powerful. Macro thoughts. Holger, Morgan Stanley expects for 2016 no double-digit returns for any asset class anywhere in the world. Home thoughts. I like this first glimpse of a black hole swallowing a star and ejecting flare. That took me back to a book by a fellow called Jeet, Thayil, called Narcopolis. The world is on fire, time is a bomb, 10,000 years, not enough, when so much remains to be done. I'll put up a photograph of that book, Narcopolis, and two further quotes, because now there's time enough not to hurry, to light the lamp and open the window to the moon, and take a moment to dream of a great and broken city, because when the day starts its business, I'll have to stop. These are nighttime tales that vanish in the sunlight like vampire dust. My religion is no way of knowing me. I think that's a very powerful statement in the current times. Political Reflections. Beijing on Sunday issued its highest smog alert of the year. It's off the charts, apparently. The Pope is going to visit a mosque in Bangui at the end of his African tour. Security permitting, the Pontiff will visit the mosque in PK5, a besieged Muslim enclave in Bangui that is emerging as a fault line of the conflict in the CAR capital, amid mounting evidence of atrocities around the country. He's urged fighters to lay down their weapons during his last leg of his African trip. Let me put up a couple of photographs from that. Burkina Faso is holding elections, and we should expect the result reasonably quickly. Millions are voting in the first time since the coup that did away with beautiful Blaise Compaoré. Millions of people have cast their ballots in Burkina Faso's first presidential and legislative elections since a popular uprising removed the nation's longtime leader last year. Vote is considered by some to be the most democratic in the West African nation's history because no incumbent is on the ballot paper and the presidential guard has been dissolved. After the polls closed, the president of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Barthélemy Kéré, said the vote had been generally satisfactory. Long queues had formed outside polling stations throughout the day, forcing some to stay open past 1800 GMT. Kéré praised voters' patience, tolerance and understanding. Presidential candidates need more than 50% of the vote to avoid a runoff. It is a victory for the youth that has expressed its will for change and for real democracy, said the transitional president Michael Kafundo after casting his vote. And I take you back to an article I wrote in 2014, Ouagadougou's signal to sub-Saharan Africa. Just repeat what the transitional president said. It is a victory for the youth that has expressed its will for change and for real democracy. And I was speaking about 2014. I said the preeminent point to note is that protests in Burkina Faso achieved escape velocity. Overthrowing incumbents is all about acceleration, momentum and speed. Out of a population of 17 million people, over 60% are aged between 17 and 24, according to the World Bank. And I was saying then that the country's youth flexed their muscles. And I said what's clear is very young, very informed, very connected, African youth demographic. Many characterize this as a demographic dividend, which for beautiful Blaze turned into a demographic terminator, is set to alter the existing equilibrium between the rulers and the subjects, and the rebalancing has begun. So I think it's a positive step forward. I think so far it's gone really well, and I do think that Ouagadougou continues to prove a lodestar in this matters, which is an interesting development. Turkey has promised to help stem the flow of migrants to Europe in return for cash, visas, and renewed talks on joining the EU in a deal struck on Sunday. As Turkey is making an effort to take in refugees who will not come to Europe, it's reasonable that Turkey receive help from Europe to accommodate those refugees. I met someone last week who thinks the refugee problem goes 10x in 2016, which is just a thought. Let me put up a photograph of Davutoglu with Donald Tusk, and then from there take you to comments over the weekend. The game has changed, enough is enough, the border needs to be sealed, a senior official in President Obama's administration told the Wall Street Journal, describing the tough message that Washington has sent to the Turkish government. This is an international threat, and it's coming out of Syria, and it's coming through Turkish territory. US estimates some 30,000 Turkish troops would be needed to close the border between Jerebalus on the Euphrates and the town of Kilis, further west in Turkey, according to the paper. I conclude by saying the torch is increasingly being shone on Turkey's ambivalent and ambiguous role in this entire affair. I will also put up a photograph of Turkish soldiers overlooking the Syrian town of Kobani. Kurdish forces have captured regions near the Turkish frontier, but Ankara says it will resist a further Kurdish advance with military force. Zena Hodder, who reports by Al Jazeera, says Russia hits back at Turkey by changing the Syria game. Russia is striking back after a stab in the back by an accomplice to terrorists by changing the game in Syria. Moscow's retaliation is not just about severing economic and diplomatic ties, it is pursuing a policy that could tie Turkey's hands in Syria. Ankara never received international backing for a safe zone across its border, but Russia has now ruled that out. The deployment of S-400 anti-air missiles means Russia has effectively imposed a no-fly zone over Syria. Moscow now seems to be moving closer to a group that has been the US-led coalition's main ground force in Syria, a group which Turkey itself, a member of that coalition, calls terrorists. This is the Kurds. No doubt a further strengthened YPG will anger Turkey, which has long feared that Kurdish autonomy in northern Syria would stir up similar sentiments among its Kurdish population. Russian President Putin seems to be eyeing an even bigger victory. He called on the Assad government and the political wing of the YPG to unite. This has still not happened, at least not officially. And then another report I saw, thousands of Russian troops head to the Turkish border. This is the Armenian-Turkish border. Stunning new Ministry of Defense reports circulating in the Kremlin states that the president this morning issued an order to the 58th Army headquarters of the North Caucasian military district to immediately deploy selected regiments and brigades of Federation military electronic warfare, anti-aircraft, multi-ball rocket launcher, anti-tank, motorized rifle, and artillery forces to the Turkish-Armenia border, which in total comprises nearly 7,000 Russian troops now being put into full combat status, so continuing to warm up the situation. Jamie McGeever, let's move on to international markets. Bonds and the JP Morgan Eurozone Government Bond Index trading with a negative yield now clock 1.7 trillion euros, almost 30% of the total outstanding bond market. Currency markets, Euro 105.80, dollar index above 100, 100.09, Japanese yen 122.95, Swissy 103.07, Aussie, let me have a quick check, 0.7200, India rupee 66.765, South Korean won 1152.27, Rial 384.58, Egyptian pound 783.01, South African rand 14.37. Dollar index, let me put up a 1-year chart. We're breaking higher here. We're back at year highs. It's looking very, very strong. Look at the European bond yields to see why the dollar is doing so well against the euro. Their yields are at record lows. Euro versus the dollar 1-year chart, it's negative yields which are weighing on the euro, 105.80 last, but it's bounced a few times off here. Let's see what happens next. Commodity markets, gold set for its worst month in 2.5 years. Spot gold, little change at 1056.30, dropped to 1052.70. It's currently at 1057. I'll put up a 1-year chart, triple digits looks in sight. Now crude oil, $41.96 in the US. I think we're going to have a 30 handle in not too long a time. The Economist tweeted about the 2 degrees centigrade limit that the climate talks are trying to impose. And that goes back to my article on the 23rd of November where I said, we've created massive interference in the cosmic tuning phenomenon, or fine-tuning phenomenon. In just 2 degrees centigrade could, in my view, upend absolutely everything. And then I saw this tweet of the Eiffel Tower all lit up for the visit for this climate change summit. Most active iron ore futures in Singapore sank below $40 a metric ton for the first time. Commodity market remains under significant pressure. Let's move on to Africa. Africa to focus on China debt at Johannesburg summit as commodities slump. Chinese state-owned firms in Africa face criticism for using Chinese labor to build government-funded projects like roads and hospitals, while pumping out resources and leaving little for local economies. Chinese President Xi Jinping visits Zimbabwe on December 1st and 2nd, South Africa on December 2nd and 3rd, before co-chairing the conference in Africa's most industrialized economy, which several African heads of state are expected to attend. Key themes for Africa will be Africa's growing debt to China and how China's domestic stimulus can reignite commodity demand to help pay off the loans and industrialization of the continent. I think some folks, it's not too difficult to work out whom, are hoping for a Hail Mary pass. Some extra money from China and probably some deferred terms. Let's see if Xi Jinping is prepared to do that. Mozambique's Metical dropped 21% last week. Investors worried about its ability to manage its finances after it launched an $850 million bond to start state tuna fishing company Ematu, only for $500 million of the proceeds to be spent on defense. So under pressure, really it's a question of the gas, and it's probably going over the horizon again. South African all-share tumbled 1.13% on Friday. Let's see how we behave today. The rand soft at 14.37. I think will print a new all-time low. Egyptian pound stable at 783. Egyptian EGX 30 down 27.43% year to date. Nigerian all shares down 20.31% year to date, but bear this in mind, it's down 22.7% since the 2nd of April, which was the day that it was announced that good luck Jonathan would step down, so it's been a really bear market move here. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index is down 12.64% so far this year. Coming to Kenya, we won't be caught flat-footed, as may have happened in the past. This is the central bank governor Njoroge to Bloomberg talking about the Fed rate strike. Because it's been so anticipated, we've had the time to think through it. We're hoping for the best, but if the worst turns out, we can implement policies that will protect us from any shocks. Central bank had FX reserves of $6.75 billion as of November 25th, covering about 4.3 months of imports. Shilling has gained 3.3% since September the 8th, when it reached an almost 4-year low against the dollar of 106.67. It's true that in the short run, the higher rates will have a contractionary effect on the economy. The point is we're looking at restoring macro stability, which will strengthen the economy in the long term. Inflation is at 6.7%, but expected to fall quite sharply. So oil prices have finally been cut. We don't think the currency is overvalued, he said. We embrace the flexible exchange rate regime while wavering in our view that there, and so from our perspective, we will let it move based on the fundamentals. Investors concerned about a widening current account deficit, those figures are inflated by imports of aircraft and equipment related to railway construction, the governor said. Removing those items lowered the shortfall to about 7.1% of GDP. And then he's talking about the moratorium on banking licenses is to give the central bank room to improve supervision of rules and allow commercial lenders to strengthen their operations, possibly combine assets. He is keen, I believe, to see consolidation. For instance, there will be banks that have been operating in only one sector. They may not be that resilient. They may be strong today, but they may not be resilient to shocks. So it may be useful for them to consolidate with other banks operating in different areas. My conclusions are that he's a very impressive fellow. Pope Francis, of course, was here and made some very sharp comments. He says, corrupt Kenyan development is a new colonialism. Accused corrupt Kenyan officials of overseeing a new form of colonialism, practices that have included stealing land from one of the capital's schoolyards. I'm also aware of the serious problem posed by faceless private developers who hoard areas of land and even attempt to appropriate the playgrounds of your children's schools. Pope criticized the minorities who cling to power and wealth, who selfishly squander while a growing majority is forced to flee. Each human being is more important than the god of money, he said. I want in first place to uphold these values which you practice, values which are not quoted in the stock exchange, not subject to speculation and have no market price. Very, very strong comments. Those who made those comments to will know who they were. Uchum reported a full year loss after tax of 3.421 billion shillings. Net sales down 10.397%, which isn't a bad outcome when you consider the situation. Profit and loss sharply lower. Now, provisions and write-offs of 1.049 billion. Profit loss after tax 3.421 billion. Commentary: above results are a result of efforts by the board to clean up the books, create a platform for an immediate return to profitability. Figures as of June 30th reflect the legacy issues that were undermining the performance of the business. The company has also provided 1.6 billion in respect to the impairment of the recently closed subsidiaries in Tanzania and Uganda, and 1.04 billion for write-off, which relates to items arising from management misrepresentation and manipulation of the system by the previous management. Accordingly, some prior year numbers have been restated to reflect the correct financial position. The new management has crafted a transformation plan to optimize and put the business on a growth trajectory through staff and store rationalization, disposal of non-core property, as well as engagement of our suppliers and customers, whose effect has been sustained loyalty and increase of stock availability on our shelves. 3 members of the board of directors of Uchum, who were due for re-election, opted not to seek re-election. They couldn't possibly. So these results, in my view, were a known. I wrote about this on the weekend. Kiptich was already delivering, I said. Oldest supermarket in the region, venerable brand, released its full year earnings. Keenly awaited results, especially after the board sacked its CEO Jonathan Siano early in the year, launched a forensic audit into Uchum's financial affairs. As we saw, a 10.937% slide in full year revenue, a loss after tax of 3.2 billion shillings, $31.37 million. Taken this 1.6 billion provision for impairment and 1.04 billion because of misrepresentations. The auditors have restated some prior year numbers to reflect the correct financial position of the organisation as of June 30, 2015. The first point to note is that the earnings release was within the expected range. Kipmitich, picked in August to replace Siano, belongs to the school of CEOs that believes when you enter such a situation, you have to move with speed and dispatch. In fact, he characterized the window as one of around 100 days. If you are unable to make the big, bold decisions in 100 days, according to Julius, it's very unlikely you can make a clean break with the past. Since entering the cockpit, the CEO has closed loss-making stores in Tanzania and Uganda. They were responsible for 25% of costs, and he's stripped 70 million shillings a month from costs by an aggressive employee right-sizing and closed 2 branches in Kenya. Kipmitich is confident that the business breaks even this full year, has outlined a sale-leaseback strategy for unlocking capital. There is a degree of noise and interference around the sale-leaseback strategy, but it's not expected to be terminal. From a financial perspective, the speed of execution of this strategy is relevant, and Uchum surely needs a financial partner to unlock the rebound. Has sought to reinvigorate its existing branches under the King of Fresh banner. Koinange Street branch, now 24 hours, has been used as a lodestar and has already delivered a 50% surge in sales. What is clear is that at the organic level, there is a strategy that can deliver and is already delivering in its first iteration. This is evidently important. Forward View seeks a deeper penetration in Kenya, a possible Uchumi Express franchise model, and a medium-term return to the region. Interestingly, Uchumi was not only looking to get back into Tanzania and Uganda, but possibly as far as Ethiopia. In the DRC, shareholders have been long-suffering. Governance challenges never create value for shareholders. In fact, we all know that it destroys shareholder value, and oftentimes companies thus challenged can enter a death spiral. I told Julius if he turns us around, he will be the Lee Iacocca of sub-Saharan Africa. Lee Iacocca, of course, was hired by the Chrysler Corporation at a time when the company appeared to be on the verge of going out of business. At that time, the company was losing millions. Iacocca joined Chrysler and began rebuilding the entire company from the ground up, and I concluded by saying yes, he can. I did an interview with Julius. Have a look at that. I also did a little walk through his Sarit Center when he outlined his new strategy for the individual shops. He is saying that there was manipulation going on over the years. He said this in an interview in Nation. Business Daily, he's looking to get back upfront payments for various sites and shopping malls. So I think he can turn it around. I'm pretty confident he can, in point of fact. If you haven't seen this Al Jazeera documentary, Kenya's Enemy Within, that's with John Allen Namu, have a look at that. Kenya shilling 102.14. Nairobi all share tumbled 1.87% on Friday after a very strong November. It's still down 12.25% year to date. NSE 20 fell 1.24% on Friday. That's down 21.87% so far this year. Once again, I appreciate you stopping by, and I wish you a wonderful week.